and thank you for joining us. I'm Wilson Stribling. Welcome to another edition of At Issue, where we discuss and debate the issues facing the state of Mississippi and how these issues impact you. The 2018 legislative session is underway. State lawmakers return to the Capitol this week to do the work of the people. If the first week is a sign of things to come, this session should be a busy one. The House wasted no time getting down to business on one of the most important issues facing the state, infrastructure. House members voted to approve a list of bills to make some headway on the issue. Here's a breakdown of what the measures are intended to do. First, future state revenue growth up to $100 million would be earmarked for roads and bridges. Half would go to the state, the other half would go to cities and counties. Issue bonds to raise $50 million for bridge improvements. And finally, freeze all new road construction with some exceptions.
We're being proactive. We don't know what the economy is going to look like, but if you don't put this in place, if we do get an uptick, what are you going to do with the money? So what we're trying to do is have something in place where the money will fall, then people can start utilizing it. That's basically what we're doing.
It is our intent that we focus available funding on maintaining existing roads and bridges. The highway program from 1987 built some great highways across the state, but in all honesty, in a lot of those areas, you may go 5 miles and not see another vehicle. So we want to make sure we have an overbuilt, and that means if we need to maintain those highways before we start building something new, we need to get our level of maintenance up to where those highways are in good condition. I have drafted legislation that would address the funding of roads and bridges in our state. However, it is likely that those bills will be sent to Ways and Means and not to transportation.
And what are those ideas?
Those ideas are to assess fees on electric vehicles, to assess fees on hybrid vehicles, to increase the gas tax and the diesel tax over a period of time, and then to index those so that we wouldn't have to do this again.
We don't have a problem with MDOT building new roads or new construction because we don't have the money to build any new roads. What the call from MDOT, from the Department of Transportation, from the state of Mississippi, citizens, supervisors, cities, mayors, it's all been about can we do more to fix the roads that we have? And that is our calling. That's what we need to do. And it's going to take an additional amount of revenue to be able to do that. And that revenue that we're going to be able to get, if we get any, maintaining and rebuilding and fortifying bridges and roads is what that money will have to be used for. Well, we're looking at the internet tax. There's some talk about if we get a lottery bill passed, dedicating some of that money to building roads. But I'm also consistent with nationally what people understand is that we haven't passed the tariff or the tax on gas in the last 25 years, federally or state. But now the people who sell petroleum products, the people who sell gas, they raise and lower the price at whim. And we don't get a benefit out of it. We don't fix our roads with that in. They take their profit and put it in their pockets. We need to figure out a way for us to source some of that revenue that big oil and big gas is making and put that money back into our roads.
Also part of the infrastructure plan, a bill that would make employees at the Department of Transportation exempt from State Board of Personnel rules. This would allow streamlining of the agency and may help it become more efficient. The Mississippi Economic Council supports the House's efforts on infrastructure. The group met with lawmakers at the Capitol this week. President and CEO Scott Waller says the MEC's study of state infrastructure shows nearly $400 million is needed each year to maintain roads and bridges and thus help the economy. He says he's hopeful long-term solutions can be found to fix the problem.
What we really want to do at the end of the day is look at all options to increase our transportation funding in a way that we can start to make a real difference. But ultimately, it needs to be something that's long-term and sustainable for us to see a big difference. We don't want to walk away from any opportunity that's going to allow us to talk about ways to increase funding for transportation. So, even if it's something that today may not produce a lot of dollars, this is something we want to look at that's going to produce dollars in the future. So to just ultimately say, well, it's smoke and mirrors, I think that maybe is a little bit too far. To say that it's going to raise a lot of money today, I think that's also a little bit too far. what you do is you strike a balance and say, okay, well, if it gets us this today, we have the potential of this tomorrow, and is it something that needs to be part of a long-term plan?
We've talked a lot on this program over the years about a state lottery. One lawmaker in the Senate is filing a bill to form one. It's likely to have bipartisan support despite Republican leadership's opposition. Republican Senator Philip Moran of Kill says he will introduce the bill. He says the economic climate is right to implement a state lottery to generate more revenue. A special committee studied the issue over the summer. A lottery could bring in $80 to $90 million, according to one estimate. Senator Moran tells At Issue he has enough votes for the lottery bill to pass out of the Senate.
It's not going to be the great savior for economic troubles in our state, but it, along with other things, can help bring in extra funding that can certainly take pressure off of our budget and increase fundings for things such as education. And sometimes it takes several years. I've seen bills get introduced here for 4 or 5 years before they were finally passed. I think a lot of it has to do with the climate, the feeling in the state, and the numbers in this building. At this point, I think an overwhelming majority of the senators are in favor of it. I can't speak for the House, so if we get an opportunity to vote on it, don't know that we will. But if we do, and we send it to the House, then we'll see how it works out over there. If it doesn't work this year, there's always another year, but you have to keep trying.
Both Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves and House Speaker Philip Gunn have said on the record that they are against a state lottery. State lawmakers are also focused on writing the state budget for fiscal year 2019. The roughly $6 billion budget to fund state government is expected to be about 1.3% less than last year. MPB's Desiree Frazier spoke with one of the architects of the state budget, Senator Buck Clark of Hollandale. He says state revenue is looking better.
December numbers are just now coming out. It looks like we had a strong collection. Sales tax, corporate income tax, and individual income tax, they're all trending upward is what we're hearing. We know we keep seeing about our unemployment numbers, how that's the lowest it's been in 20-something years. And when your unemployment is low, that means more people are working, more people are receiving paychecks. I know the withholding tax numbers have been very strong. So that means that's money into consumers' pockets, which then drives sales tax, which is our largest revenue coming in. So all that's very positive for the state, our revenues. But again, it portrays that our economy is getting a little stronger in the state, which, people are more profitable.
There have been struggles in the past couple of years with funding state agencies and mid-year cuts. Do you anticipate any of that?
No, I don't. I've had my stomach has been at ease a lot better this year than it has the last couple of years, and it's just knowing that I think things have leveled off. Our economy has gotten stronger here in Mississippi. We kind of trail the federal level. The federal economy has been getting better for the last couple of years, and they always say Mississippi trails what's going on in the rest of the nation. And so I think maybe we're catching up there, and I hope this is sustainable and we can keep moving forward. Again, it's just a reflection of what's going on out there in our state's economy.
We had a chance to catch up with leadership in the House and Senate on the legislative priorities this session.
We want to work on a rewrite of the education funding formula. I think there's a better way of doing it. I think we can find a more reliable, predictable stream of revenue. We also want to continue our focus on roads and bridges. We have said all along we think that's a priority of government, and we are going to continue our focus there. And then, of course, the Medicaid issue is up for reconsideration this year, and that's an issue we're going to have to tackle. So those three things are primarily going to be our focus this year.
There will be opportunities during this legislative session on the Medicaid tech bill. That's something a lot of you have heard about and talked about. That's something that we work very hard on in the Senate and try to pass in a bipartisan way, and we'll hope to continue to do that this year. We've got some challenges from a funding standpoint. We probably have a deficit that we have to deal with in Medicaid program, but we'll certainly look at that and see what things need to come forward because of that.
Let's get straight to the point now with views from both sides of the aisle. Austin Barber is a Republican national strategist. He's the founding partner of the Clearwater Group. Brandon Jones is a Democrat. He's an attorney with the Beria Jones Law Firm and a former member of the Mississippi House. Gentlemen, good to have you back with us for a new session, a new season of At Issue.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Let's start with some news we haven't talked about yet. Austin, you called this stunning on Twitter, the news that Congressman Greg Harper, representing the 3rd District of Mississippi since 2009, is not going to seek re-election this year. Stunning, you called it.
Yeah, and I may not have used the right adjective there. Stunning sometimes has a negative connotation. It probably should have said a little more surprising, because there's nothing negative here. Most of the conversations about is that Congressman Harper wants to spend more time with his family. He's got a brand new grandbaby that his daughter just had. And listen, I fully respect him for that. But it's certainly surprising, Wilson, if you're anyone who pays somewhat attention to Mississippi politics, you looked at Greg Harper as a man who candidly could have stayed in that congressional seat as long as he wanted to. Certainly was thought of once Senator Cochran finishes the end of his term in 2020 as a front runner for the U.S. Senate race. But he decided to take a different career path, go spend more time with his family, and I certainly respect him for that and wish him the best wishes. I mean, he's a guy that's beloved in Washington by anybody who ever deals with him. Very friendly with his constituents, loved inside his district and throughout the state, so he definitely will be missed.
Yeah, Congressman Harper is one of the most personally likable people in the state of Mississippi that's in public office. And, public service, we sometimes forget, is not a life sentence. It's a service. These people have other interests. They have other endeavors. They have other matters that sometimes it's time to go on to. He certainly served honorably, didn't always agree with the positions that he took, but this is a person who I think kind of fit that mold of what you would hope for in terms of his temperament and personality as a congressperson, and so that leaves a pretty big gap. And
as you know, being a former member of the Mississippi legislature, it's a tremendous demand on your time. It's difficult for to make this work for your family. It is very hard. And he's on a plane twice a week to Washington and back. Many people who look at the life of a congressman for a U.S. senator think it's glamorous. It's really not, because when you're back in the district, if you're a good congressman, you're traveling throughout the district. If you're a good U.S. senator, you're traveling throughout the state, seeing your constituents, working with your staff, and that's a tremendous pressure and burden on anybody in that office.
I want to say this, just one more word about civility. I think of Congressman Harper as being a civil person. We've seen people in his position, several congressmen across the country who have decided not to run for re-election. We've seen some senators, most recently Orrin Hatch, make that decision. And I know at least for some of them, it had to do with the tone and tenor in Washington. They have not enjoyed working with this administration and frankly haven't had too much enjoyment out of working in Congress because it hasn't really been the type of job that they were accustomed to, where you go and you work on the issues that you truly care about. Certainly I have no information to suggest that that's where Congressman Harper comes from, but I will say that we do need voices like him in that process, people who are civil, people who have the ability to speak to people who disagree with them. We are becoming increasingly polarized in this country, and so it's sad to see someone who had that type of demeanor leave the process.
And we will be choosing, Mississippi and the 3rd District will be choosing a new representative come November to take office in January. Also have a Senate race that will be happening at the same time. So we'll see what happens in November. I want to move back to state politics now, state issues. Infrastructure, we've talked about that already a little bit. Has anything of substance really happened at the Capitol in terms of infrastructure based on what you've seen, Brandon?
Having been in the State House before, I am going to say what I'm about to say with some sympathy, but that was some of the most boring clips we've ever heard and most meaningless clips. All of those folks really were struggling to find a way to string sentences together that sounded like they were going to become laws, but none of them know that. We're very early in the process, and you heard about a lot of talk about the transportation bill. That is the most aspirational and meaningless bit of legislation that we've seen this year. We're early, but this notion that somehow we're going to have growth that we haven't seen since we started talking about this show, and then how we might utilize that growth. Look, I'm glad that they're setting priorities, and I'm glad that roads and bridges seem to be at least getting lip service as a priority, but Republicans don't have an answer to this question, and I've said this for several years now. This is one of the key issues afflicting our state. If we don't get our infrastructure problem figured out, it's only going to compound itself as each year passes. And what we just heard was not a solution. None of that stuff we just heard is likely to pass. We heard nobody from the Senate talking about transportation, and it takes both of them to get there. And so I think that we're going to have to turn up the heat a little bit on our elected folks to get down to finding out an answer and quit telling us about all the reasons they can't find us an answer.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think what I took from what you said that matches with my beliefs is that they have a priority, that they have prioritized infrastructure, sending money back to the counties, to supervisors, to mayors, to city councilmen, to board of aldermen to say, listen, we understand you've got roads in your own town. You've got bridges in your community, in your counties that are closed right now. I've heard Willie Simmons, who's the chairman of the Senate Transportation Committee, who represents Bolivar County, maybe Sunflower, don't let me lie, but I know it's Bolivar for sure, who has said that he's got dozens of bridges within his own district that need to be repaired. So leadership, Speaker of the House, Philip Gunn, Lieutenant Governor Tate Reeves, they have their own way of managing in their own chambers, okay? I think we've got two different philosophies as of right now. With the House, they want to go fast, they want to show movement, they want to put their agenda out first, get it out immediately. This is where we are. This is how we think we can make a big dent, have a serious plan to tackle infrastructure. There's not a lot of meat on the bones. There's some. We can get into that in a little bit, but that's their plan. I think with the Senate, I think this is how Tate Reeves has always been. He's patient. He is going to be diligent and thoughtful in terms of the best possible plan that will help the state. I no doubt that he's educating members. They're all under one roof right now, educating members, gaining their support, and he's going to, for whatever that plan is that he wants to come out of the Senate, and follow the process. We're 3 days into the session, and I think that is the path that they're both going. Listen, I should say this. They both want a solution. Not a one-year solution, not a two-year solution, but a permanent solution at 5 to 10 years out. But they also both understand, we have to understand what the federal government is going to do. As I wrap this up, we have to understand what Congress is going to do, what the Trump administration is going to do, I think within the first quarter of 2018.
All right, let's talk about the lottery. There seems to be more optimism based on what we're hearing at the Capitol that a lottery might actually get passed this year. What do you think its chances are, Austin?
Lottery may be as good as it's ever been.
When you say that, you mean as far as the support for it?
Yeah, the support for it. We'll see what happens when they get into the weeds of debating the issue. I mean, there are concerns out there from people in the gaming industry about video lottery terminals, which we see our neighbors over in Louisiana. Brandon and I have talked about this on the show. When you go into a laundromat, a restaurant, a bar, or whatever, and there's that little lottery terminal, people in the gaming industry are concerned that a lottery, going and buying a lottery ticket, may be a pathway for those to infiltrate our state, and nobody wants that. Legislators don't want that. That's the big issue that could hold up a lottery, but yet to be seen.
But can't they craft legislation that would address that specifically?
They could. Illinois tried to craft legislation a few years ago. Next thing they knew, VLTs came in, took half of the revenues away from brick and mortar casinos, and you've got a casino industry that's really struggling. A casino industry like in Mississippi that's invested billions of dollars and has tens of thousands of employees. That's a concern.
Republicans have a revenue allergy in this state. They don't want to raise taxes and they don't want a lottery, and then they just want us to hope and pray, as Representative Reed said, that things will just get better on their own. It's really fiscal nonsense. We're going to have to find a way to put money into programs. Now, that goes back to process, though, and it's not just with respect to the lottery. It's what Austin was saying earlier. I think you were very charitable about how these things move. Tate Reeves moves fast when he wants to move fast, when it serves his politics. Philip Gunn moves slow when he wants to move slow, when it serves his politics. There's a little bit of inside baseball we did not cover, but if you listen closely to those clips, you'll hear it. Charles Busby, the chairman of the House Transportation Committee, said that he had filed some transportation solutions. They included a variety of things, including revenue-raising measures. He said, I don't think those will get assigned to my committee. They'll probably go to Ways and Means. That is your chairman of transportation in the House saying that his solutions are going to get deep-sixed by getting rerouted to a committee so that they never come up again. if we're serious about issues, let's get serious about issues. And if we feel so politically hamstrung by revenue raising that we can't do it, then let's move over and let some folks step to the table who can actually answer some of this stuff and see how that works. Our big problem here are the tax cuts that we have slowly and incrementally passed over the last several years that are not paying the type of dividends for middle-class families that we were promised that they would. Our roads and bridges are not better. Medical care is not better. Our kids aren't learning faster, as our former president used to sort of say. And so we're not getting the payoff for this tax cut infatuation that Republicans have, and now we're about to try the same thing at the federal level.
Not to disagree with my friend across the table, but I must do so. Buck Clark, who we had clip of, said numbers from Herb Frierson, who's the tax commissioner, who runs the Department of Revenue, has said, look, we've got good numbers for December. Let's don't go throw a party and have a ticker tape parade. Let's watch them, but they're promising numbers which we need to see. Revenues are up, tax revenues are up, jobs appear to be up a little bit, but we'll be cautious with this from the Republican side.
But what Buck didn't say, and what we all know is, they always happens around Christmas because folks are shopping for Christmas presents. And so, again, I think Republicans, when they talk about fiscal economics in this state, they always want to take credit for gravity. They always want to take credit for, well, we're in charge and now we're spending more money in this. That's because we have more people. Or December just passed and we had better tax response. Well, that always happens.
Well, Senator Clark did strike a note of cautious optimism, but as we come off a year where we had multiple cuts to state agencies, do you think that will hold true, that we will have a better economy and a healthier budget in the coming year?
Austin and I both want us to have a better economy. Yeah. We come on here and we argue about policy. I would like nothing better than for John Reed's dream to be realized. I would like for us to see better revenue because that makes life better in this state. That's quality of life. That goes to all the issues that we're talking about. But no, Wilson, that's unrealistic. We just had to make cuts 5 times last year. So you're going to tell me, what is it, January the 5th, and we're going to go ahead and say that for the rest of this year, no more cuts? Give me a break. Nobody can say that.
But it's not unrealistic, and I appreciate Brandon saying that, because we do. We're both civil. We disagree on the policy issues, and we lay those out on the table here, but we both want Mississippi to be better no matter who's in charge. But with Republicans in charge right now, they do have this core belief. If we cut taxes, okay, if we cut our spending for the state, we prioritize infrastructure, education, healthcare, whatever it is, that's less money that we're spending, less money we have to take for taxpayers, which should be more money that job creators have to hire more people, pay more people. Employees have more money to spend, and therefore the economy gets better. If you just look at what happened at the federal level, you saw that all these massive national corporations, we don't live in Russia or China, they're not federal corporations, that were giving big end-of-the-year bonuses to their employees because of the big tax break plan that happened. So I think it may be a slow process. Hopefully we're beginning to see good numbers, and they will trickle up. But as you said, we better be cautious. I better be cautious as a Republican on this.
Of an unknown for this session, we haven't heard a lot about this just yet. I anticipate that we will. Education, MAEP, more talk about the funding formula for public schools. There's EdBuild out there that came up with this new plan that's still being digested, apparently. What's going to happen with education?
I don't know. I have always said that I thought it would take 2 years. They began this conversation last year. I said, no way it's going to happen in 17. Got to get my year straight here. But as we're in 2018, it could potentially happen. Of course, the plan is to try to prioritize how they spend money, where the money goes to specific school districts and so forth. And I don't know. I heard the lieutenant governor say the other day, this may not happen. I think he technically said, if we make a formula change this year. I took that as very interesting. I think we'll be interested to see what Richard Bennett, who's the new education chairman in the House, what his plans are, along with the Speaker, to try to do this year or wait until next year. I don't know.
How much does a change in leadership there with Representative Bennett now in charge? How much effect would that have on the direction of policy like this?
Without gilding the lily, I'll say I think we made an incrementally better move. I think we're in. I think look, I served with Representative Bennett. He's a former supervisor. He's got a good head on his shoulders. He has a true commitment to education. Yeah. Without commenting on anything regarding Representative Moore other than his politics, with respect to his approach to education, I've never seen anybody that disliked the government more, that kept wanting more power within it. And so we need somebody sitting in that chair that cares deeply about public education, and I think Bennett does.
Richard is pragmatic, and Richard is very well liked within the chamber itself. I think on both sides of the aisle, certainly has the respect of the Speaker. I know he works well on the other side of the Capitol with the Senate too. I think he's a really good choice to chair education, and I think that it'd be interesting to see what they do on the formula.
Well, look, there's a commitment that Speaker Gunn has made to Democratic leadership to make sure that whatever proposals come out are fully vetted, that questions are asked and answered, and that we have a longer period of time between committee action and floor action. And I think he's sincere about that, so I'm hopeful that that's the way it plays out. But just to cut through all the talk about education formula funding, any formula that puts less money into public schools is a shell game. And I fear, and I hope this doesn't come true, that Republicans aren't simply trying to set a number that enables them each year to say, we fully funded it, but it's incrementally lower than what's actually needed.
And I don't think that's what they want to do at all. As the Speaker said the other day, we have funded public schools, K through 12, at a record level. I don't think they have any plans to do that.
All right, we'll leave it there. Austin, Brandon, thank you as always. Thank you for joining us on At Issue. We are out of time. Don't forget, you can check out the program on our website, mpbonline.org/issue. And we invite you to join us again next Friday night here on MPB as we look at the state of the state on another edition of At Issue. Good night.
I know I might have to talk about John White, isn't it?